Yo, 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 this is Steve with another episode of the Black Superheroes Matter podcast. Today we got Jessica Micheline. You can follow her at Mapou Comics. Jessica is a Haitian comic book creator and writer who gets her motivation from reading Marvel comics and DC comic books. In her comic book, Mapou, she creates Haitian superheroes to teach the youth real facts about their rich history and culture. It's a great conversation, excited for you all to hear it, and without further ado, let's get it started. I wanted to take a break from the episode to let you know that we have some merch that is available. Over at Iltopia Studios, you can find the Black Superheroes Matter art book, which is a collection of illustrations that reimagine your favorite superheroes through the eyes of children of color. We also have a bunch of sticker packs, over 120 different sticker designs of your favorite superheroes. More importantly, we have our Color Me Super coloring book series. Definitely check out the merch at shop.iltopia.com or blacksuperheroesmatter.com. And now, back to the episode. Thanks for joining me on the podcast. I definitely appreciate the time you're taking. I hear that you're moving right now, so obviously, within the quarantine and everything, just obviously there's a lot going on. But how's things going with you?
Things have been going pretty well. Like I said, I'm pretty much trying to stay busy. I have a group home that I operate, so that keeps me busy constantly since the kids are not in school. I'm there every day. So I'm moving, I'm doing that, and I'm working on the comic book. But having the free time and not having the pressure to be somewhere every weekend or in the evenings, or it's funny how quickly we tend to distract ourselves when we have all this time to distract ourselves. But being quarantined, giving me time to work on things that I've been wanting to work on for a while. So I've been good.
Okay. That's always good to hear, especially right now, because numbers are still going up, and
right.
And it's just a very interesting situation, especially for Black people that are like seeing the numbers and seeing how that sort of hits closer to home for us.
Right.
It's one of the things that I'm always curious about with creators is, what are like, for you as a creator, like, what do you do? Are you a writer? Are you an illustrator? Are you like a comic book maker? I feel like titles become so nuanced at this point, but like, what do you do as a creator?
I am an author. I'm a comic book author. I do sketch, I create, but as far as the illustrations for my comic book, that is completely by partnerships and collaborating with other artists. But I am a writer, so comic book creator and writer.
Okay. And so for I know that a lot of writers sort of look at comics as sort of like an easy route compared to traditional novels and traditional prose. What was sort of like your motivation for pursuing comics?
I love comic books. I've grown up, like reading Marvel comic books, like back in the days when we didn't have enough to buy comic books, but we had enough to sit in the comic book store and eat pixie sticks that were a penny,
Right. Yeah.
Reading Marvel, reading DC comic books, like that was my motivation. I've always wanted a comic book. And, I'm Haitian. My family is from Haiti, and there's so much rich culture, spirituality, especially when you look back in our history, voodoo and the revolution, and telling that story in a comic book, I just felt like would be epic, and creating Haitian superheroes would be epic, and being able to teach the youth about spirituality through a comic book, as in, in the comic book, I depict Loa, which are Haitian gods, so that's actual true history. I'm using real facts. So it's an opportunity for me to teach the youth, the other Haitian Americans that are trying to understand who they are and understand their ancestors, I'm trying to give them an opportunity to learn it while really being engaged in the text. Not a history book or a history class, but a comic book, something that they can engage with and connect with. So that was actually my inspiration behind making a comic book, was being able to reach the youth at a capacity that they could actually access, the information.
Man, yeah, and as you're talking about that, I instantly think about, sort of like my introduction to cultures and folklore that aren't necessarily part of my culture, and I instantly just think about just like manga and anime.
Yeah.
I'm a big Naruto fan, and so if anybody like knows any of like stuff about like the tail beasts and the stories and messages behind all those characters, I mean that's exactly
Right.
what you're saying. What you're talking about
Yeah.
with Japanese culture, and so it's like there's, and we see how successful that is, and
Yes.
and like as you were talking, is like I didn't realize that like I know more about like Japanese folklore because I love Naruto,
Right.
and it wasn't
Yeah.
intentional, and I think that's the power of storytelling it, and so it's great that you're sort of
Yes.
seeing that there's a space for that with other cultures outside of the traditional ones.
Yes, Ashe, that's exactly the point. I feel like there is no reference, for Haitian Americans to tap into to really connect with that part of themselves. And it's such an amazing story. The Loas themselves, the gods themselves have amazing stories to tell. And then how that intertwines with our revolution and our history and who we are as people right now, or the battles that we do in the spirit realm and how that affects our reality. I just want to be able to allow them to tap into that, because like you said, I look on TikTok and you see these, you see Black girls dressing up in anime and they fall in love with this night. I mean, I do too. Like,
Yeah.
They fall in love with the characters, the history, the culture, the clothes, the hair. They start speaking. I mean, there are kids speaking whole other languages just because of this, So yeah, that's exactly what I want to tap into. And I want to eventually do cartoons and movies and in shows. Like, I want this to continue to grow. The comic books is just the beginning of it,
Yeah, man, and I think that's the beauty, and that's the beauty of the space that we have now. I mean, we have the time now,
Mm-hmm.
but we also have the access to resources now that quite
Right.
often we haven't just had the opportunity to have. Because
Right.
people might feel certain type of way about Adobe Creative Cloud and subscription models and all these things, but for somebody that what can watch tutorial videos on how to use all the software,
Right.
but can't spend $2,000-3,000 to buy Photoshop. You're either going to torrent it or you're going to try to you're going to be sort of paywalled out of it. But because of
Right.
these subscription models and access to free software like GIMP and Blender and all these, like we can actually take control over our culture and our stories, and we can put those out on the internet. And
Yeah.
you know
You don't have to leave your space to collaborate with
it-
like minds. You don't have to leave your room anymore.
yeah.
You don't have to leave your house.
Oh my gosh. And right now you can't leave your house. So it kind of,
Right.
it's kind of one of those things that really sort of tests the resolve of really creators right now, especially because, there aren't any conventions. There aren't any, you can't do any book signings. You can't do any of these like traditional promotional gatherings. And so you can either try to figure out how to make money online, or you could kind of put the pen to the paper and you could just start creating those stories. And so at the end of this, you'll have stuff to show for it. And
Right.
it's an interesting time for sure.
Absolutely. It is. It's I know it's a crisis and there's so much happening, but it's also a great time for reflection, like you said, great time for creating. And it's a great time to be reflecting on ourselves, and I think a lot of people, it's like you notice everybody's posts and conversations start to change and get a lot deeper during this quarantine because everybody's going inside because they can't be distracted.
Yeah.
So I mean, it works. I mean, it's there's benefits to what's happening as far as the quarantine itself, not the virus, but the quarantine.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that like really hit people, but hit people unintentionally, and people don't necessarily like know how to articulate it, is the fact that like they've been labeled unessential. And so
Right.
like
Yeah.
like we have a large percentage of the population that is literally unessential to to society right now.
Yeah. And they're starting to realize, whoa, what have I been doing my whole life? There are people
Right?
with degrees that are unessential right now, and they're really looking back like, what did I do?
Yeah. Like how can I use a computer so that I can be essential again?
Right. How do you use Zoom again? How do I download that?
Yeah, it's hilarious. It's hilarious, and I think that's sort of the reflective. It's reflective of sort of this like overnight paradigm shift that I like started to notice, and I'm just like, dang, all the stuff that like we're sort of working for, and we are compromising our sleep and compromising our happiness for, all that stuff at the end of the day just means nothing, you know like
It's not even essential. Yeah, like 60 hours a week, and it's not essential.
yeah, it's literally like it's non-existent right now. Like it's like that stuff is just crazy to me, that like this is actual reality.
Yeah, like looking at some businesses that like may never open back up again, places that were like buffet style. I was driving past Sweet Tomatoes, which is like a salad bar, and it just looked like a ghost town. Like they were not ever gonna open up. I was like, what? Why does it look empty in there? And I'm thinking like it's because people have to stick their hands in, and it's an open salad bar. So it's like, will it ever open again? Because will things ever really go back to how it was before? Like there's some businesses that will actually never open back up, and that is kind of crazy to see what is going to stay open and what is going to close.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's really crazy too, because like the comic book industry in and of itself has been very resistant to. I wouldn't say that the comic book industry has been resistant, but just comic books have been resistant to sort of like that digital transformation. And so like we're seeing that, comic book stores and bookstores in general have been taking a hit, but comic books have, because just the sales for comic books and sort of the buy-in for comic books with on an iPad or anything just haven't really been able to replace the physical copy. And so it's I'm really interested to see how this sort of shapes the industry of comic books. And I think, for the better, because, it's really hard as a Black creator to make a comic book and get it out on a mainstream scene, because you got to go through Diamond. And Diamond is like the only company that will distribute your stuff,
Yeah. And I mean, I think that me personally, the digital world can never really replace a paperback comic. So I don't know how that's going to change, being able to hold it in your hand and watch it stack up, for me, like collecting them and watching them stack up, is different than having a bunch of files on the computer. So I don't know how that's going to be in the future. I don't know how that's going to change.
Yeah. And I think it really sort of buys into that, sort of that wave of webcomics that have been really coming out, because people aren't buying new comic books that come out every Wednesday, but stuff like Webtoon and Tiptastic and Tumblr still, or like those WordPress comic web comics and Instagram. Yeah. Like I think there's there's nothing in a space for that now.
Yeah, actually, there's a couple of Instagram comic strips that I really enjoy. Oh yeah, actually. But I don't. Those are comic strips, though. I don't count those as a whole comic book.
Yeah.
But comic strip, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're like the new funny pages, right? where it's like, you get a nice quick laugh, and then and you'll continue to like tune into those, but it's not something that's gonna hold your time for more than like a minute or so,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
because my friend Marcus Prime, he's having like a big resurgence in his sort of work with his webcomic, and it's like, dang, he finally like found his voice, and now he's like really cranking out stuff. But for the longest time, I'm like, dang, you need to make like a adventure story or something. Like, we need an adventure story, but I'll take whatever I can get at this point.
yeah, I mean, the comic, I think I know who you're talking about, and I love his comic strips. They're hilarious, and they're very relatable and very simple, and sometimes, I mean, Rick and Morty is very basic animation that I wait for every episode. I literally will pay $2.99 for every episode.
Oh yeah,
just so I can see what I have to say on time. Like, sometimes the simple things get the point across, and it works. And for a comic strip, I always felt like comic strips. I mean, first of all, you can use comic strips within comic books, so I feel like it kind of works well together.
Yeah.
As a progressionally as an artist. I don't see how he couldn't actually branch out into doing something more serious too.
Oh yeah. And so, one of the things that I'm always like curious about with creators is how did you kind of get started? How did you get started on this journey of pursuing comics, even though you have other things that you're balancing as well?
I started by collaborating with artists. First I started just by writing out just like descriptions about every character, writing out the storyline, like what I wanted the basic storyline to be for my comic book from Mapou. And then just trying to understand who every character is and how they play that role in the storyline. And then I just started collaborating with artists because I'm a visual person. Like, I have to see them to give them life, and so working with an artist to help me develop the character, help me develop more of their powers and what they would be doing in the spirit realm and how they might move. So that's really how I got started with actually writing the comic book. But like I said, I've been inspired to do it for so long. And I think when I opened my group home, I was actually able to have the money to invest in my comic book. Like, it's always been something I've wanted to do, but I've never had enough money to invest in just designing a character. I was like, I don't have money to just get somebody to create an image for me, that is not going to actually in turn make me some kind of money, because you have to have something to invest into it, and I'm not necessarily doing a Kickstarter right now or looking for investors. So it's just me. So I wanted to wait until I had the money to actually invest in it and be consistent with it. So now I'm at a place where I can actually start pumping out, character designs every month, and actually paying an artist. That's another thing. Before I did anything, I've done a lot of things, but before I had my group home or anything, I was a photographer. And, so I understand as an artist, you can't do things for free. So I wanted to be able to actually compensate an artist for what they were giving me. I understand the collaboration and the partnership, but I still want to pay you. So getting the funds together, actually, I'll say, is probably where I really started.
Okay. Yeah, and that's really sort of one of the hindrances of really getting stuff out there, especially if it's not quote unquote mainstream. Trying to go out on a leap with an idea that like you're passionate about, that is culturally relevant, but you really have to really put up the money. and there's this,
right,
that like for a creator to be creative, there is a financial component that often is glossed over, but not necessarily confronted in a way that it should be, because it's a motivating factor, and it's a hindrance, at the same time. And and I think in this day and age, where we had conventions and we have Kickstarter and all those things, we're seeing that more and more Kickstarters for indie projects and self-publishing projects that are sort of, pariahs in traditional publishing are being successful.
Right.
Like a
Yeah.
perfect example is like a Tuskegee Airs. Like
Right. Yeah.
they had an
Yeah.
idea, they put it out there, and they had a successful Kickstarter, and now that really launched their career. But if you would have tried to do that to Penguin Books or Marvel or DC, it probably not wouldn't have gone as far.
Yeah. It's interesting because I would love to start a Kickstarter and see how people actually go out and promote their work. I feel like you have to have a lot of content though in order to start the Kickstarter so people are ready to invest in what you're doing.
I would because I had Greg Burnham on the podcast, and he said that he only had like a couple of pictures.
Wow.
Like he only had a couple of pictures, and so they didn't have the book done. They just came up with the concept and put a Kickstarter together and put it out there. And so I think, from people that I've talked to, there are people that have had, that are finished with their books and they're just trying to get it, printed and out there. And for others, it really is just an idea that they want to see as successful. And I think sort of the beauty of Kickstarter and sort of that open platform is that there isn't any rules, and that you could kind of, do your research and everything, but you could kind of use it for whatever purpose that you want. And I think I appreciate that more about that there isn't sort of a one way that you could go.
Yeah, there's multiple avenues to get your project off the floor. Yeah.
Because I think, like you said, it's really difficult for somebody to have an idea and try to make that idea, but then have to deal with the finances of it. And so, if you could pre-sell some books and have that fund the production of it, I mean, more power to you.
Right, but otherwise, I'm all for the idea of having to grind and kind of just, work the job that might not be exactly what I want to do or exactly where I want to be, just so I can save up and make it happen the way that I really want to. Like I had to have an artist create at least a few images so that I could present to people so they can see what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? So it's like you gotta have some kind of financial backing. And sometimes it can be a deterrent from diving in. That whole concept of being a quote unquote starving artist is not appealing, to most people.
Oh my gosh. Oh no.
But it doesn't have to look that way. You don't have to dive in with nothing. Sometimes we have to, buckle down and work a job that might not be the most artistic job, but it's a job that will pay for your artistic, goals and your progress. Like you have to kind of make sacrifices where you need to.
Oh man. Yeah. And that's sort of the, that's kind of the reality that we have, for most of us, is just we have to make compromises, and we just have to make sure that we don't compromise our creativity when we're trying to find opportunities to be creative. And that's a thin line to navigate for in certain situations.
Yeah, I can completely understand what you're saying. And you'll go through moments where you kind of lose yourself, lose your art for a minute, and have to come back to it. I've totally accepted that I would come back to photography. Maybe, black don't crack. Maybe in my 50s, I'll come back to it. I have all the cameras and the studio space I want, and all the props and everything I really want to spend money on, because that's a very expensive craft to dive into.
Oh my gosh! Like, what camera were you shooting with?
A Canon.
Like a full frame?
Yeah.
Ooh, man, you wasn't playing around.
No, I was not. I don't know what I used to do. I used to work with a clothing line, a high fashion clothing line up in Massachusetts. I used to do concerts sometimes.
Oh, okay. So you kind of need those.
SLR. Yeah, use a small SLR for those sometimes. Just so I can carry it around and not feel like I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders.
Yeah.
Um,
You have an
but
attachment
it's
with like 7 batteries and stuff.
yeah, and 15 different lenses because people think it's the body of the camera, but reality it's the lens.
Yeah, like
Um,
you buy a camera that's $1,000 and you get a lens that's like $3,000 and it's like, oh my god.
yeah, that's and people that are trying to get into like photography, like my cousins will be asking me like, what should I get and what kind of camera, and they want to spend all this money, and I'm like, man, I started with a Fuji, my friend. Like I was getting paid
Yeah.
using a Fuji. Okay, like you don't have to. I was using a Fuji and I think a Canon lens or something. I was like, you don't have to have a Canon body. You just gotta have the lens that makes those images crisp.
Yeah.
You know.
And I mean, at this point, you better go on Craigslist or eBay and try to find
Yeah.
you a hand-me-down, just so you could grit your chops a little bit.
You can rent them now. There is no excuse. You can rent them now.
Yeah.
You can borrow them, and then send them back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely expensive though. So I can't wait to practice these after I retire from everything else.
Okay. And so to wrap up, what are you excited about? Like what are you excited about with your work or with your projects that you have coming out? Are there any things on the horizon we should kind of be on the radar for?
Yeah, I am collaborating with a couple of new artists, working on my cover art, starting to work on storyboarding already. So I'm hoping to drop more characters. There's 4 main characters, and I've only released 1. So I'm looking forward to releasing the next one really soon. So that's really what I'm looking forward to. I'm hoping to start dropping, snippets and teasers by the end of the year, so people can understand what they're going to be looking at in the story to come.
Okay.
That's what I'm most excited.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the project called?
Mapou.
Mapou. How do you spell that?
Yeah. Mapou.
Okay. And can you give us like a little bit of a synopsis of what it's about?
Mapou is a story of 4 Haitian American teens that are called to do battle in the spirit realm. And basically the storyline is that it's the idea that the spirit realm and our reality is always intertwined and connected, whether or not we accept it or we realize it. And so for these teens, they're choosing to accept it and come into that realization. And so they're called to do battle in the spirit realm by different Haitian law. And again, as things are happening in the spirit realm, they're happening in our reality. And as things are happening in this reality, things are happening in the spirit realm. So there's that duality. And so we kind of go back and forth in the comic book, going from what we know as our reality and the spirit realm. And so their body changes, their characteristics change, their abilities change when they go into the spirit realm. So it's going to be a lot of rich culture, like I said, diving into the history of Haiti, the Haitian Revolution, our ancestors, the voodoo and ritual and spirituality, and how that ties into who we are as a people and our culture. So I'm really excited about this project. It's literally what I've been waiting to do my whole life.
Okay, wow. It's it definitely sounds really exciting, and hopefully when everything dies down, like I'll see you on the convention circuit, and I'll see you kind of out pubbing this, because I think these are the types of stories that that people are looking for right now. We got the Marvel Cinematic Universe is over. We got our superheroes. Like
right.
we need other stuff. We need other stuff now, and so I'm always fortunate enough, and I'm glad to be able to talk to creators like you that are really sort of taking their ideas, taking their experiences, taking their culture, and trying to really expand on it in a creative way that more people can appeal to. And so keep doing what you're doing, because I'm really excited, and I'm sure that things like these are only the beginning for Black creators.
Yeah. Ashay. I appreciate you giving me the platform to even speak on my project. Like I said, it means so much to me, and I know the other artists that you have coming on to your show, like you said, they're coming through and they're flooding because we've been looking for a place to talk about our projects and to get the exposure that we need so people know that we're here. So I appreciate you, giving me the opportunity to speak about my project with you. And asking me all these questions, I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, it's I think for me it's within the quarantine and everything, I see my girlfriend every day, but that's about it. That's probably the only person I interact with. And so having the opportunity to kind of just like meet people on a digital platform and really find things that like I wouldn't find if I just walked down the street is it's definitely a blessing, and I'm pretty fortunate in this space. And so how can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Instagram. That's probably the best place to find me, actually. It's Jessica_EXL. I'm also on TikTok, J_OSnap. That's another place you can find me. Also, the comic book website or the Instagram for the comic book is Mapou Comics. So it's Mapou Comics.
Okay. And I think hopefully everybody starts to flood the gates because they ain't going outside, so they could go online and check it out. And I'm just excited I'm excited to see what more you have in store for us. And so again, I really appreciate the time and the conversation and letting us get to know a little bit about you and what you're doing. And I hope you're staying safe and and staying healthy with everything.
Thank you. You too.
Oh yeah. And so with that, we'll just call it a wrap. And I definitely appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. You have a good night.
Oh yeah. Same to you. And there we have it. That is another episode of the Black Superheroes Matter podcast in the wraps. Again, the purpose of this podcast is for people to get exposed to a variety of different things that Black people are creating in the arts and entertainment industry. The goal is for this podcast to bring light to all those and those creators, because as a community, we have the opportunity to skirt some of the problems that we've seen in this day and age when it comes to expressing Blackness. And so if you love this, definitely check out the more work that we're doing. Go to @BlackSuperheroesMatter, or you can go to blacksuperheroesmatter.com to check out the blog and the write-ups that we do on these guests. And if you're so inclined, feel free to support my work at Iltopia, where we have the Black Superheroes Matter art book, the Black Superheroes Matter sticker packs, and even coloring books, activity guides. And so if you want to check that stuff out, check it out at shop.iltopia.com. It's all Black owned. I might add, they're all handmade products, and they're all made with love for the community that has really given me the opportunity to find my place in this world. And so, again, thank you for another wonderful episode. Thank you for listening. Feel free to follow all the stuff that Black Superheroes Matter is cranking out. And excited to share another wonderful guest with you on next episode. So without further ado, thank you very much.